until those boxes get checked, I am going to continue to push myself to get in that ring, give back. Steve was one of those guys that when he entered a room, it was an instant like vibe check. They were trying to figure out a tag team. And so Pat and I got paired together for I think a 6-month run. They pulled Makazi and I, and we came out to Ryback instead, which was unique at the time. All of my best like emotionally high matches have gone through him. When we first teamed, we were just going by Slade and Shurman. There was actually a online or TV poll that had different options of what to name them. And it was like Team Hell No, Team Friendship. Thank you, WWE. We were supposed to be the heels. Shurman just has this innate ability where he's always the babyface no matter what situation you put him in. I say to him, hey, one day, me and you will probably share the ring. Teamed with Dreamer. That was one of the largest drawing events that Chaotic Wrestling had done. That was probably the most stressful time of my wrestling career.
Ladies and gentlemen, hosted by Coach C, Chris Sanders, this is Best for Business.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Another episode of Best for Business. I'm so pumped for this one. Scotty Slade, man, thank you so much for joining me.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Chris. I appreciate it.
I'm pumped. I'm getting these old school chaotic guys. I'm pumped to finally interview you now. One thing I wanted to ask you about, not a lot of people can have told me so far, what was it like learning from someone like Steve Bradley?
Oh, so Steve Bradley used to run WFA, and he used to run a school up in New Hampshire. Steve was one of those guys that when he entered a room, it was an instant like vibe check. Like he carried an aura with him where everybody had kind of like stopped and just wanted to take as much in from him as possible. And so I had the fortunate opportunity that when I was training with Bob Evans, I switched over. I started to train a little bit with Steve on the side, and working with him with WFA and having that opportunity to kind of sit with him as he, like one thing about Steve is when he ran his WFA shows, he did his own production. He did his own booking. He ran everything. He was a one-man band. And so I was reffing for him at the time. So I was able to sit with him during every one of these shows in Gorilla and just pick his brain. And the guy just had a amazing mind for the business.
Nice. What would you say was like some of the biggest lessons you learned from him?
That for a successful professional wrestling show, it's like a 3-ring circus, so to speak. Like your shows should have a little bit of everything. And when you watch Steve put those shows together, you had your like over the top, cage matches. You had your women's matches. You had your comedy bits. You've had literally anything you can think of under one umbrella, so that when you went out to his shows, you were satisfied with at least something.
Nice. What were like the early WFA days like?
So the early WFA days were kind of like, I don't want to say like Wild West, right? But he had his crew from his wrestling school, and he used to bring in some other guys like Tim McNeely, Bob Evans, Johnny Idol, and he would literally have gimmicks across the board. He'd have like the Mexicanos, he'd have the Metro Men, which if you ever get a chance to interview Scott Gurn, you can ask about his time with the Metro Men as the Shane. But no, like he would show up to these events. He would be flyering the towns himself. And then when it came for showtime, he's basically changing in front of his laptop as he's trying to cue music, get guys to come in the back. He's yelling at Alex Arion to run the shows. And like I said earlier, he's done it all himself.
Yeah.
And it was just truly something to watch.
Nice. So when I think chaotic wrestling, one name that pops up is Scotty Slade. So I'm curious, when did the inspiration behind Scotty Slade, the name, how'd that happen?
So I'll try not to drag this out. So my brother was an actor growing up. So his name was Sean Phelan. So when he was growing up, he had passed away in a car accident right around the age of like 17, 18. He was kind of like stuck in a coma. And I wanted to take the stuff that he had done with his acting career and kind of peel that into professional wrestling. I had not started wrestling at the time. I was only 7 years old when all this transpired. So when it came time to finally like figure out like, what's my persona? What do I want to do? And to pay homage to Sean, I took the S of his first name, and at the time, I really wanted to do the double S type deal. Um, Meanwhile, I was a huge Razor Ramon fan,
Hmm.
who those that know go by Scott Hall as well. And so I thought I was way too young to look like a Scott, so I added a Y to it for Scotty. And then I'm also a giant comic nerd. And so if you guys are familiar with Deathstroke, Slade Wilson, I decided to take Slade's name, and then that's how we got Scotty Slade.
Nice. So when you started Scotty Slade, how long was this run with the Slade brothers?
The the Slade brothers, man, that's a callback. So the Slade brothers was an opportunity for me to kind of get some ring time. My tag partner at the time, Ray Slade, he had started training shortly before me. We had kind of met in the same like town. We had done some backyard stuff. Now it's kind of like taboo, but we had done some backyard stuff. And him and I were able to tag with Bob Evans like student shows. We did a little bit with Sheldon Goldberg's NECW, at like the Good Times Emporium and I think Fitchburg. I could be wrong on that. But it was like deer in headlights. I had no idea what I was doing. It was probably like the best way to kind of ease myself into the business because Ray was able to kind of like guide me and take all of the heat off of me as he kind of helped call the matches and so on and so forth.
Wow. So when did Ray stop?
Wait, you know what? I don't even know if Ray ever really took off. Ray also went like the reffing route a little bit, but he worked for Steve as the Ray. He tagged with the Shane. There was also the Mike, which was Mike Bennett. There was a fourth Metro Man that I'm trying to remember, but they had predominantly worked so heavily for Steve for so many years, and then Ray had taken a few too many bumps through tables and whatnot, and had to take a step back and just never really got back into it.
Wow. So the Slade brothers never reunion, never gonna happen?
Every once in a while, it comes up in texts and whatnot.
Yeah.
I think his bones would just completely turn to dust if he tried to get back in the ring.
So one thing I love about all these old school chaotic wrestling guys, I'm curious your story. How did Scotty Slade go to NWA On Fire?
So one person, and his name's going to come up a lot during this, is Brian Fury, right? And so Brian Fury was actually the reason that I even came like back into wrestling. When Steve Bradley had passed away, I had stepped away from wrestling in general. My mom had gotten sick with cancer at the time. I was like, you know what? Let me just take care of this in life. Brian Fury reached out and he's like, listen, you gotta give it one more go. And so when he kind of got me back into it, there was a company that was being run up in the Northeast in like the main area by the Savoldis, Thomas Savoldi.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was great.
Yeah.
And so Brian was able to bring up students. And so just went up into a car ride with him and he told Tommy to give me a shot. And I ended up working Julian Starr and they loved me. And I ended up getting to work a whole lot of stuff with them, all the way up from Maine down to like Poughkeepsie, New York. It was great. It was good times.
So I gotta ask you, how does the idea, this is one of my favorite parts of your career, teaming with Pat Matthews, the Young Stallions, how does this one happen?
Well, so Tommy and Mario were trying to figure out how to get more and more of Brian's students work.
Okay.
So, because at the time, every time he brought students up, we were like leaps and bounds better than everybody else was up there. That's not a knock at anybody from the
Yeah.
main area, but it was just a little bit better talent. So they were trying to figure out a tag team. And so Pat and I got paired together for I think like a 6-month run. And they needed to come up with names. And we were sitting in the hotel room and we're just throwing everything at the wall. Nothing was sticking. And then, yeah, what was it? The Young Stallions or
Oh,
something?
yeah.
That was what we came up with. But it really was immensely short lived. I love Pat, though.
Is there a match from your NWA On Fire career that stands out to you?
Ah, there's at least two. I'm gonna just say the first one with Julian Stark because I wasn't expecting to work that day. I just, you always bring your gear, you keep it in the trunk.
Hmm.
And then that was when they needed me to fill in, and that was the first time the Savoldis got to see me. But that match meant a lot. But working Ricky Reyes, at the time, I just gotten back into wrestling. I was not as much of a student of the game as I should have been at the time.
Hmm.
And the Savoldis put me in this program with Ricky Reyes, and I didn't know who Ricky Reyes was. Shame on me. But this whole time, like, if you ever get a chance to like look him up, he's working Ring of Honor. He's doing stuff with Japan. He's literally a seasoned vet, all these accolades. And here we are in some weird town of Maine, working for the TV title. Probably that program with him probably meant the most because that's what kind of elevated me to get the confidence to start working at all other places in New England.
No, well, you mentioned it, the NWA On Fire Television Championship. What was it like when you finally got that 3 count and won that thing?
It's weird, right? Like I always tell guys and students and all that jazz that titles are fake, but the confidence of a company to put the belt on you is
Yeah,
what's real. And NWA On Fire was trying to get TV time. They had got some spots up in the New England area, and I think like a random spot like San Diego. And so they wanted to put the title on me. So to get that opportunity to represent this company in such a short time span working with them really did mean a lot because it was like one of my first major titles coming
nice.
back in the industry.
Was that your first championship or no?
I think it will. I think it was. I don't think I really held anything before I had to step away for a little bit.
Nice. So when I look at your career, there's one match I gotta ask you about. You team with Alisha against Danny and Mercedes, but Sonny is the ref. How does this happen?
Yeah. Uh, oh. So part of me coming back, I was trying to do anything I could to kind of get into these companies.
Hmm.
The company at the time, and still is Chaotic Wrestling, right? Like it was the premier place to be.
Yeah.
Even more so then, it was like a fortress to get in. And the booker at the time understood what I could bring to the table from like a mic perspective. So they teamed me up with Alisha Edwards. And we started to really gain some traction. And then they really wanted to start to spotlight the women's stuff even more. So they decided to bring Sunny in. And I don't know, I don't know what the age gap is between you and I, but like
I'm
how old
20.
are you're 20? Yeah. So I don't even know. You're not even old enough to remember like prime time Sunny.
Yeah, yeah.
But
It
like
doesn't like live up. Like it's weird watching it back.
yeah, it doesn't, especially if you
Yeah,
try to look at current Sunny. Oof. But
yeah.
like, yeah, back in the day, she was the heartthrob. She literally
Mhm.
was like everybody's like cat's meow. So getting the opportunity to work with her and kind of like go through that match, and especially like Mercedes was new at the time, Danny had been around for a bit. It was such a great feeling to be able to step into the ring and start to showcase some of my wrestling stuff and do some of the tomfoolery with Sunny.
Nice,
It was definitely a great memory.
nice. So when I look at your career in tag team matches, I think you wrestled a few times. I could be wrong. Is there any moments or memories wrestling Brutus the Barber?
Uh, yeah. So I've wrestled Brutus a handful of times.
Yeah.
He's up there with one of the more like laid back individuals. Like I mean, you got him, you got Duggan, you got $1 Million Man, but like
Mhm.
with Brutus, he he literally is just like the good brother. He just want to call it out there. And I think the first time I worked him was with Mike Pava, and then I was teaming with Lumberjake.
Oh yeah.
And the best part about that is I've got this bad habit that if you get something in my head, once I'm out there, I have to get it out. Like I can't keep it inside. And Lumberjake at the time was like, please, you can cut anything you want. Just don't try to cut my beard. And we went out there and I made the announcement to the crowd that if we lost, we could shave off Lumberjake's beard. And so Brutus was all for it. And I remember that like we were chasing down Lumberjake at the end of that match to try to cut off his beard. They didn't succeed though.
Wow. So when we talk tag teams, I gotta ask you about this one. You got to do something a lot of people wish that they did. What was it like teaming with Kid Makazi against Ryback on Raw? Now, how did your opportunity come to be?
So funny story with that. And again, Brian Fury's name's getting mentioned.
Nice.
Brian Fury was running the New England Pro Wrestling Academy at the time. It might have still been the CTC, so I apologize if I'm getting my
Yeah.
timeline messed up. And WWE called him and said, "Hey, we need some smaller guys. Do you have anybody in mind?" So he gave my name. So I'm literally at work. I'm up on a ladder. My phone's ringing. I look down and it says like Stamford, Connecticut, and I'm like, I'm not picking this up. And and the voicemail gets left, and I listen to it, and it's talent relations asking me to call them back to see if I was available that Monday. Now this is Friday of a work week,
Yeah.
and it's Monday. And I called up Brian and I was like, is that really WWE? And he's losing his mind. And so super, super quick, because this is what like made me go bonkers.
Hmm.
WWE wanted you to show up with like plain gear. All my gear at that time just had Scotty Slade on it. And mind you, I'm 5'6", 5'7". I'm 130 pounds. There's not a lot of, at the time, there's not a lot of gear that fits me. I don't have enough time to overnight generic gear. I'm
Yeah.
freaking out. So I end up in the women's section of Target looking at yoga pants because I needed something like
Yeah.
black and generic. Thankfully, at like the very last minute at like 9 p.m. on that Sunday, I had gotten some gear from this new student that worked at another school, Nick Fahrenheit. and he ended up giving it to me, and I got on. And so even when we showed up at Raw, um, they still hadn't figured out who they're going to pick. There was probably about like 8 or 9 of us.
All
And then
chaotic guys?
no, there was like a blend because like at the
Nice.
time it was easier. I don't want to say easier, but you used to be able to put your name in and then they'd keep like a catalog of like who was in the area and they would just kind of like call you that way.
Mhm.
And so when we were all sitting there kind of going through discussions with the Regal, all of a sudden in the background I see IRS and Arn Anderson and they're just pointing at me. And they come over to me, they're like, "Come with me right now." And I was like, "All right, hey, whatever, whatever you need." And yeah, they pulled Makazi and I, and we ended up going over like the layout with Ryback. Triple H comes over, he kind of explains where they want us positioned for all the TV moments. Um, and yeah, and then the rest is history. Like we had a great opportunity to be able to go on the mic, and instead of having Ryback come out to us, we came out to Ryback instead, which was
Nice.
unique at the time.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
So did you have any say or anything about your name?
No, none whatsoever. The only thing was is they handed us the script and we didn't get a chance to pick who is what yet.
Mhm.
And we're looking at it and I'm looking at the parts of which would say, and I'd be like, Makazi would be great. He'd be great for this spot. Let me take Fillmore. Um, and so while they're setting the ring up and all the guys in the ring, and so you've got like CM Punk's out there, Big Show's out there, they're like, we want to do a walkthrough. And so they have us literally coming out of the curtain, coming down the ramp, doing all the mic work before the show.
Mhm.
And like I said, we're in front of all these guys that I've watched, admired over the years. And so it was definitely like a humbling experience to be able to do all that in front of them.
Now, this part blows my mind. When did you find out you were in the WWE magazine?
So somebody had called me and sent me a text with the photo. And I think I've got the magazine somewhere. The article's kind of just like going through all the people that Ryback have wrestled.
Yeah.
But no, it was great to at least kind of get like, I don't want to say acknowledgement. It's not like there's any like extra cash coming in because of it, but it was neat to see for that fleeting moment your own face inside a WWE magazine.
Yeah, so you talked about his name earlier. You mentioned it, William Regal. So how cool was it for Chaotic Wrestling? I forgot the exact segment. Weren't you revealed by Regal as like a challenger for Chase?
Yeah, and so Brian had made an immense amount of connections
Mhm.
with WWE. He had gone down there a couple times to be like spot coaches, and so some of those connections allowed over the years to bring in WWE talent to kind of meet with us. Regal was one of them. So Regal had done a camp at the school, free to the students, and we were just booking the Chaotic show, and Chase was also a booker at the time, and we were like, "Hey, Chase, you want it? Like, you and I can work." And they just worked in Regal to do this promo off with Chase, which then led to him introducing me, which was a tremendous experience.
Is there any moments in your career sticking out wrestling Todd Hanson, Ivar?
Oh,
And take your time.
when it comes to Todd Hanson,
Yeah.
I would say like all of my best like highs, like emotionally high matches have gone through him. Like him and I have worked at Beyond. Him and I have worked not exclusively, but like in the ring together at XWA. And then most importantly, I have worked him a couple times in a chaotic ring. And there was a match in particular where they had fired me from chaotic wrestling, or Sean Gorman had taken over. They had fired me from that. And the fan base had started to do this Bring Back Scotty campaign. Like fans were handing out shirts before the shows, like they were coming in holding up signs. They basically were trying to do like this overthrow of the system. And we were
Yeah.
gonna wait 4 or 5 shows to get me back in. And it
Yeah.
just couldn't take that long with the way the fans worked. And so they were doing this tournament for a title. And they ended up working this angle where I got myself put in because Shurman had taken all the names out of this like random like bin and put my name in. And so that's how I got pulled in. And so Todd and I were the finals of that tournament.
Nice.
And that was probably the first time that I could genuinely feel the energy of the crowd.
Nice.
Everything that we had put through, and it was like a 20-minute match. I'm probably exaggerating, but everything we had put in, every move that hit, every false finish, every kick out, every pin attempt on both sides, the crowd was just there literally for everything. Even when it ultimately ended up being that Gorman got involved, gave me a low blow, and I ended up losing to Todd. Even as I stood up, the place was doing this like standing clapping ovation. Like it was something in my career at that time I had not experienced. So getting to do that with Todd, who was also one of the trainers for the CTC, was just immensely huge.
So you mentioned his name. I'm curious. What was Scotty Slade's first ever interaction with Mark Shurman?
Like for, like on screen or like
Oh,
just in life.
just in life.
Um, so first time I've ever met Sherman. If you have you ever met Sherman? Have you had
No,
the
no, but he hit me up the other day. We're gonna do a pod.
oh man. All right. Well, we'll see how his answers differ from mine. The first if you ever get a chance to meet Sherman, he is like a total party guy, right? Like he is just great to go out with. He's just got this like over the top. He literally oozes charisma. And it was just something where as he was doing his spiel and I was doing mine, they kind of just looked at us both and was like, you know what? Scotty acts more like Brain from oh my God, what's that show called? Pinky and the Brain. And Sherman's more of the Pinky, this like large, just subpar like goof head, and
Yeah.
like let's merge them together and just see what transpires. And we just kind of made magic happen.
What was like the inspiration behind the name Team Friendship?
So that's really good. So when we first teamed, we were just going by Slade and Shurman. Our merch said Slade and Shurman. I was pretty adamant at the time that like I didn't want either of our names to go under the radar. Foolish thinking, but whatever. And we started to work for this company called CTWE. And they started to like us to use us as a tag team. But Joey Bricko, the owner, said to us, we need a tag team name. And this was right around the time that Daniel Bryan and Kane were teaming together.
Mhm.
And there was actually a online or TV poll that had different options of what to name them. And it was like Team Hell No, Team Friendship, and it was like something else. And so Bricko saw that and goes, "Can I call you guys Team Friendship?" And I was like, you know what? Sure. I don't have an issue with it.
Mhm.
And that's how it came about. Thank you, WWE.
So when you talk about CTWE, what was it like when you guys finally won that CTWE Tag Team Challenge?
Oh my God. So, we talk about like that Todd match of like the highs and lows.
Yeah.
This was another one of those pieces. CTWE at the time was like the hottest company in Connecticut. We had been trying to get on that show for quite some time. We had started to like gain some notoriety with our name just throughout New England. We were working NECW. We were like loosely working Chaotic more consistently. We were doing some goofy vignettes there. And we had this opportunity where they put us in this like 5-way tag match. And a lot of guys were deserving of who should go over that night. Joey came to us, was just like, I want you guys to go over. And as we built this match together and we were going through it actually live, the crowd was getting more and more in favor of us to go over. So much so that like you can see literally people jumping out of their seats as false finishes are kicking off towards the tail end of it. And when we finally end up going over, that was our first like real tag team titles together. Like we had won the NECW tag titles. They were kind of going through like a restructuring. So the houses were a bit more low, and that's no fault to Sheldon. But CTWE was packing the house. This was the first time that like literally wall to wall, it was hot in there. Like fans were just like foaming at the mouth. And when we won, Shurman ended up getting so emotional over it. He ended up like crying to the point that like you can hear me yelling on camera. He's crying. He can't believe he's crying because again, we were supposed to be the heels.
Wow.
And Shurman just has this innate ability where he's always the baby face no matter what situation you put him in.
Now, when do you win? Is it the NEWA Tag Team titles too?
The Northeast,
NEW.
yeah, NEW. That was a little bit more down the road. Mike Lombardi had bought out CTWE, and then kind of absorbed that company and then ran the same building. He then created his own tag team championships, which at the time I think it was Ron Zombie and Bull Dread.
I love it.
Yeah, they were the first tag team champs. And then we ultimately ended up getting the titles in that company. And then that was like another, I think it was like 2 years we went undefeated in Connecticut and to not lose those titles. It was wild.
Now, I know you started with Steve Bradley, but what did it feel like to win the Chaotic Wrestling Tag Team Championship? Because technically, wasn't that your home?
Yeah, like, when we talk about homes, like it's so wild. Like I'll try not to like drag it out. Like I started training with Bob Evans, then I went to Steve. Before that, there was some like Bush League style training that I got myself involved with. And I'd always had a hard time like finding that place. Like even with WFA, I was still trying to learn the business. I was reffing predominantly. It was just me trying to learn more about the back end of wrestling more than the actual wrestling itself. Because at some point, I wanted to be a promoter. And
Wow.
so finally getting that chance to find that home in chaotic wrestling and going through like the lineage there. I mean, you got like the Logan brothers. I mean, you've got tag teams like Republic. Like you've had like Brian Milonas and I can't think of his Sledge. Like there was just so many just top tier tag teams that if
Yeah.
you go down the list of who's held those titles, there's some real legitimate Hall of Famers there. And so to then be able to hold those same titles at a place that has basically revitalized my career and love for pro wrestling was just a monumental accomplishment for me.
Nice. Is there any Tommy Dreamer stories that stick out to you?
There's all of them. No, but what's funny is I think I posted on my Instagram. I'll have to go back and look. I had met Tommy Dreamer in a shopping mall. He was doing like just like fan photos with Bill Alfonso at like an RF video like pop-up stand.
Love it.
And yeah, and I'm wearing my Tommy Hilfiger like jacket. I'm basically like 120 pounds soaking wet. I think I'm like 15 years old. And we take a photo and I say to him, hey, one day, me and you will probably share the ring. And of course he's giving me the good brother. He's like,
Yeah.
yeah, man, we sure will. And years later, we ended up doing a 6-man in, I think it was Woburn, Massachusetts. We've done others, but that was the first time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I teamed with Dreamer. And it was this like surreal, like circle of life moment that the one like vet that I get to meet in real life and talk about my pro wrestling dreams is the one I get to tag with all the way down the road.
Did you ever tell him that story?
I did. I
Nice.
mean, like like Tommy and I, when we see each other, like we're rather friendly with each other. But
Yeah.
yes, he's well aware how much of a Tommy Dreamer mark I was way back in the day. So
Love it. One thing I'm curious about, I've been seeing it recently with APW and Chaotic, but what venues have you wrestled in that really stick out to you?
um if there was a couple venues that I'd have to pick out, it'd be Fenway Park. I got an opportunity. I think Brian
Nice.
Milonas was the catalyst for that, but there was just some show at a festival that was being held there, and I got a chance to work. I think it was Brett Domino, and then other than that, the Littleton Opera House. Again, there's opera houses across the board that people get to wrestle in.
Yeah.
Littleton was important to me because that was where Steve and WFA had built their biggest name. Like the Littleton Opera House had so much like lineage when it came to Steve's product, and I never got an opportunity to wrestle there. So to then come back to it with chaotic wrestling and getting a chance to wrestle in that same opera house, which I got to dive off of the second tier of the opera house, um, just for giggles, I
I
guess if
love
you
it.
want to call it that. Yeah. But I would say those two spots. But yeah, there's other spots. Like we did a movie theater for chaotic at Chunky Cinema. And then breweries obviously are like the hot commodity right now. And
Yeah.
then baseball fields. There was the Lowell Spinners
Yeah.
was one of them, where we've also wrestled outside that field and then inside actually on the field. And then I
Nice.
know that Lucky Pro has done a couple of baseball fields as well.
So when you talk chaotic wrestling, you've got to do something pretty cool. What was it like to be a part of and win Pandemonium? Because your match was stacked too.
Yeah, it's nuts, right? So that was around the time that they were trying to figure out what was going to happen in the main event for that Cold Fury.
Mhm.
And I was gaining at that time gaining enough steam with the fans that I don't want to say I'm like undeniable, right? Like I think that's cliche. But I was a fan favorite strong enough that the bookers were saying this might actually work. And yeah, like you had Matt Taven, you had Biff Busick, you had Vinny Marseglia, uh
Wagner,
Slick
yeah.
Wagner Brown.
Hanson.
Oh, that's right. I can't like literally all those
Yeah.
all those guys have done much more than me later on. And yeah, to be able to go in there and get the nod and all the guys were cool with it. There was no like, nobody was bitter about it, at least to my knowledge.
Yeah.
And them just kind of all working together to make me look the best possible way that I can was great. It was a great match to just work with all those guys.
Yeah, so we mentioned a lot of names, but two that stick out is Fury and Shurman. So what is it like? Not a lot of people can say they main evented Cold Fury. So what was that like? You win Pandemonium, huge moment for you, and then go into that.
That was probably the most stressful time of my wrestling career. But I'm glad that it happened because there's like every pro wrestler has this like line in the sand, right? Where the road will split and they'll either become so self-infatuated that they self-sabotage, or they'll finally figure it out and then you can kind of make opportunities for yourself.
Mhm.
And going into that, I definitely got ahead of myself. I was like neck deep in trying to figure, because they weren't sure. Literally, the decision of who's going to go over happened days prior to the event,
Love it.
because every step of the way I was just like, give me the opportunity. I'm ready for the opportunity. And they were just unsure if I would be a good enough champ for like a long-standing period. So
Mhm.
they got cold feet and they ended up putting the belt on Fury. But what was cool about that event and going into main event, that was one of the largest drawing events that Chaotic Wrestling had done. It was one of the larger drawing events in the area at the time.
Yeah.
People now have surpassed those numbers, but we had done, I think it was over 500, and it was with no names. This was all homegrown talent. This was with just the Chaotic Faithful. This was just pure great promoting, just great hard work from the entire roster. And to be able to main event that and to look back on like just the numbers that we did,
Mhm.
it like truly is humbling to understand that we were able to put on a show for the New England area and not have to pay top dollar for some ex WWE or ex person to just come in to kind of boost those sales.
What venue was that?
I should remember this. I'd have to go back. I think it was the Lowell Middle School potentially. It was either
Nice.
Lowell or Danvers, but it was the middle school or high school there, and it was just
Nice.
a large enough venue that we could pull in that many.
Is there an Alisha Edwards story that sticks out to you?
I don't know if there's like a singular
Yeah.
story, but as much as like Cold Fury and that whole program helped mature me in like pro wrestling, Lish helped mature me as far as like mic work, not getting ahead of myself. And she had been around for forever at that point. And we
Yeah.
kind of had started at the same time, but with my time off, she had just continued going on. And so as we were kind of like navigating through working alongside her, it gave me an opportunity of working with the crowd and when to hit the gas and when to peel off. And I was able to test out so many things working alongside her. And then afterwards, we'd like chat about it, get like the pros and cons of what worked, what didn't work. And so I credit a lot of my ability to read a crowd while I'm on the mic because of working with Lish.
Nice. So you talked about earlier winning the Chaotic Wrestling Tag Team Championships. What was it like to win the New England Championship? Because that title's pretty prestigious too.
It is. It is. Um, that was the first time I won a singles title
Wow.
in Chaotic. And again, that was like me getting excited for the potential of like maybe I'll have a singles run within Chaotic.
Hmm.
Um, and then getting to work Brandon Locke during this whole arc to try to get that New England title was fantastic. The blow off was at Cold Fury.
Hmm.
Um, I'm probably getting all this wrong now, so I apologize. But we had gotten Ron Simmons involved. We get to do a cameo with him. It led to a brass knucks on a pole match, which is when I ended up getting the title.
Nice.
And yeah, and it's just finally getting some sort of like acknowledgement or recognition from like Office to finally like put a solo title on me.
Yeah.
It was just a great feeling to try to experience that.
So when you talk your career, some of the matches, even when I did cage match, I was looking back because I don't want to say they're unheard of, but a lot of people wish. So the next one I ask you about Team Slade versus Team Milonas, Dreamer, Guido, Richards. How was that one?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Mark for
But
Tommy Dreamer.
yeah, no, I know. Well, actually, I marked out pretty hard because that was an opportunity to get to work Stevie Richards, who easily one of the nicest individuals I ever met.
Nice.
Um, and little Guido and I have worked together several times at that point. And then like later on. But what was neat about that is we wanted to figure out a creative way. There was a few guys in the Chaotic locker room that they didn't have anything substantial for them. They deserved to be on the show. And so Milonas and I kind of talked with Chase and Fury. I think Fury was booking at the time. And they came up with this idea of like Team ECW versus like Team Slade, or Team Milonas versus Team Slade. And what we did is we did this bit where all these names were in this like bin, and so we're circling the bin, and we each get to pull. And so Milonas goes first, and I don't remember the order, but he's pulling all these ECW legends, and
Yeah.
I'm pulling all these students, and I'm like losing my mind.
Yeah.
But calling that match, it was surreal because like
Yeah.
you're talking about three guys that literally were a cornerstone to a company that you grew up watching. And being
Nice.
able to just be in that circle and try to put together this multi-man match was incredible.
Yeah. So when I talk about being a mark, I guess I can call myself a Scotty Slade mark. I remember watching Ring of Honor, and Donovan Dijak has this big entrance, and you're a part of it. And there was a few other people from New England. So does anything stand out from that one?
Yeah, it was the worst experience of my life. No, the issue with that was is he wanted to live stream the entrance, which is why I ended up having this like cell phone. And we were in, I forget what building we were in, and the cell service was trash. It was just awful.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden there's like one bar and we click the go live and his music hits and all of a sudden cell service just dies. So now I'm just holding this dead phone. So I ended up having to just take out the camera app and like record it.
Yeah.
But it was great because I think he worked Bobby Fish. And that was for a title match. And getting to go out there and kind of experience the Ring of Honor. We had done the Ring of Honor tryout not too long ago. So like the locker room, some people in the locker room are already kind of familiar with who I was. And just being able to be in that environment and kind of see like that next step on an independent level of like what the premier place is at the time
Yeah.
and being able to be on the floor there and doing something where Dijak and I are like very personal friends. Like
Yeah.
he was in my wedding party, all that jazz. So being able to support my friend in one of his biggest moments at that point is in his career was huge.
Wasn't there other New England guys with you too, part of the entrance?
Yep, it was Anthony Green,
Yep.
Mikey Webb, Brian Fury. Like because of the magnitude of this match, and Dijak wanted to expand this entrance, he grabbed people that was closest to him. And so
Nice.
like all those guys that I've named are in a group chat together, you know what I mean? So it's just like
Yeah.
we have been in each other's lives since that we've all started in wrestling respectively. And it just felt right that that was the crew that was going to go help him out.
Nice. So when I think Scotty Slade recently, the King of Dad style, what's the inspiration behind that one?
You know, when my daughter was born, that was when like, you know, this is coming off the heels of like Cold Fury 13. I had met my daughter's mother at the time right around then. And so I started to get a level head for pro wrestling. And then my daughter comes into the world. And it was one of those things that I didn't want to step back from pro wrestling because I still love pro wrestling. But it was the first time in my life that something was able to match my love for pro wrestling. And that was my daughter.
Mhm.
And, you know, the advice given to new guys is be yourself, but just amplify it. And so I loved being a dad so much, and I wanted to try to just push that moment forward. Being the king of dad style, which I think Nakamura at the time was the king of strong style.
Yeah.
Being the king of dad style just felt like the right niche to kind of run towards just because of my personality and how I am in the ring, combined with the fact that I'm a father.
Yeah. One thing I love about Scotty Slade when we talk about wrestling and content, what are the ideas behind these Kings of Dad style videos you post all the time?
So when the pandemic hit and
Yeah.
wrestling got taken away, that was the first time I realized how important wrestling was to me. Like wrestling has been a part of my life since I was, you know, as far as on the professional side, since I was 18, right? So I'm 40, I'm going to be 41 this month.
Wow.
So like literally all this time, but I never realized once it was gone and I couldn't do it because of the pandemic, that creative outlet messed me up. And I'm not in a bad way, but like you had this itch, like we've been able to pour ourselves out in this art form.
Yeah.
And now that was gone, I needed something. And so TikTok, Instagram, Twitch streaming, whatever you name it, has now just become a cornerstone for me to get that creative stuff out when I need to. Just to keep that like mental stimulation that like, even though some of them are extremely dumb and corny, it just allows me to get that like itch just taken care of.
So you mentioned it. I loved watching it. I don't know why it stopped. When did the Twitch streaming start and stop? Because I remember watching you play MLB The Show all the time.
Don't you lie to me. So I'm a huge baseball guy.
Yeah.
And I love MLB The Show. Again, I started playing during the pandemic, fell in love with it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, you know what? Let me just try to stream. So, you know, this setup, and I had another setup at my previous house. And the problem with MLB The Show is at the end of the day, it's baseball.
Yeah.
And baseball, for all intents and purposes, is not action packed. It is not fast paced.
Yeah.
And so I got a really hard dose of having to overcompensate when I was playing the game and having to talk more than I normally would. The action was secondary. there was nothing to kind of bridge that. And so over time, I tried to shift to other games, but I didn't fall in love with any of the other games. And so then it started to feel like a job for me to play like first person or like, you know, your Fortnites, things like that. And so I slowly just kind of let it like fade to bed
Yeah.
because, you know, ultimately nobody wants to sit there and watch 9 innings. And I can only tell so many Scotty Slade
I
stories.
remember there was times like I forgot the mode, like Diamond Dynasty. At least you were like ripping packs and like making
Yeah.
it
I
entertaining that way.
mean, yeah. Like again, like my problem is there is no like how-to guide to do Twitch streams. So if there's
Yeah.
anybody that happens to watch this and is like, I want to get into streaming, I just say go for it, right? Like it's a great experience. People will come through your chat. It's great to interact. But I was at the time of the mindset that like duration is king. So like I'm logging in because I put my daughter to bed. I'm logging in at like 8. I'm playing till like 2 in the morning. I'm trying to catch everybody on the east to the west coast. And the problem is like 6 hours to play a game. If I ever reprise it, you'll see much more like condensed, shorter streams so that the content can be like tight
Yeah.
and like I can get in, I can get out, and it'll be much more watchable than just these like long marathons, which I thought at the time was the way to get numbers.
I used to love it. During the pandemic, it was you, Julian Starr, JT, Trip, everyone was streaming.
Yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to the creative outlet. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it was JT and Trips were doing Fortnite predominantly. I think they did, and Julian was doing Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Julian had a solid run. But yeah, it just goes back to that piece that like we get so comfortable performing in front of people that once it was gone, we were just like, let's just reach out and go into the camera and see what we can find.
One thing I want to ask you about, I was talking actually to Sweatboy about this the other day. What was it like to be the Lucky Pros Hard Knocks champion 931 days? Like, that reign is insane.
I wish it was 1,000. Um, No, it was one of those things that organically happened.
Mhm.
I when I had decided that I wanted to get back into wrestling post pandemic, I talked to Chris Sullivan and Jim Burgoyne, and Lucky Pro opened their doors to me. They were the first company that kind of let me back into their graces, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to take the title off Sweatboy?" And I was like, "Sure, why not?" Right? It'll give an opportunity for me to start working like students, like being a heel in that company. I can work a lot of like fresh meat baby faces, give them a chance to like get title matches, just get to work the crowd.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what we did for a period of time. We'd bring in some people,
Mhm.
like Teddy Goods and things like that. But for the most part, it was this like round robin of just getting newer guys experience, which is what I wanted to do on this time around. I wanted to try to elevate surrounding talent. And then show after show, and then all of a sudden we look at the clock and we're like, holy crap, we're getting close to like 700 days. And then we're getting close to 800 days.
Yeah.
And then we're getting close to 900. And I am not a guy, like I said, post Cold Fury 13. I'm not a guy that's going to ask for any favors. But I was debating on whether to go to Chris and being like, let me hit the 1,000. It's irrelevant, but let me hit the 1,000. But Leo Sparrow at the time is an up and comer. If you have not checked him out,
Yeah.
I highly suggest it. The opportunity came for us to work. We had worked once before, and I was like, yeah, this is the guy. Like he's gotta just let him take the title, and then we'll just see where it goes from there.
Is there a defense that stands out to you?
Um, oh geez, that's such a great question.
931 days is nuts.
It is nuts. Yes, but for all the wrong reasons. Yes, for all the wrong reasons. Um, I had worked this gentleman by the name of Pitbull Marcos Santiago. From a talent perspective, knows to the stone. He goes out there, he does his thing. He could use some work. That's not a knock at him. He knows this. I know this. Like he used to train at Nipwa. But he had some really strong support, and he used to be able to fill that building with a large fan base of his, and being able to go into that as a heel. I'm gonna get blamed for this, but it's just like, Rock Hogan type thing, right? Like
Yeah.
he had such a large majority of people there to see him that just stepping in the ring and not locking up with him made the place furious.
Yeah.
So like having that sort of like interaction stood out to me the most.
How did Scotty Slade go to Atlantic Pro?
So, I'm still haven't like really tried to work every weekend. And so I was looking at another place at the time, and Atlantic Pro Wrestling was a spot I had never worked. And so I'm very big on making sure I hit all my boxes. Before the pandemic, I had worked everywhere in New England. I made sure I touched all the companies, good, bad, indifferent, doesn't matter. If you ran in New England, I wanted to work for you. And I never worked for Atlantic Pro Wrestling. So I reached out to Mike that runs that company and just asked for an opportunity if I could get in. And he had let me come in. I think I worked at Elia. It's one of like my first shows there. And then Mike wanted to continue to use me. And then it was that weird time in the flux where I thought I was going to need spine surgery. So I switched to commentary for him.
Mhm.
And yeah, I've been working there ever since.
Now, one thing you just said before talking about Lucky Pro is your goal since the pandemic, like you said, just to elevate the younger talent?
Yeah. Like
Wow,
I
nice.
I have no I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, right? Like I've got
Yeah,
no plans to try to be like the next like top champ in the area.
yeah.
If putting the title on me makes sense for your company and if it can help elevate somebody in a program to put the belt on them, great, super, awesome. I would look for a contract with one of the bigger companies in more of like a secondary setting, like
Mhm.
whether that's a manager, whether that's just more of like part of a larger group. I understand my limitations. So like my job now, in my opinion, is all those amazing experiences I got to have where I got to main event all these companies, where I got to work these top stars, where I got to be put in these premier matches. And I had all these veterans and experienced guys with no egos attached, kind of like scoop me in, elevate me. It's my turn to make sure that these guys that are starting to get into the business get guided in the right direction, avoid the landmines that this business can provide, and just see if I can get them to the next level and just give them the same level of experience.
Nice. So you mentioned it before for Atlantic Pro. You were starting to do commentary. Is this something like you've always been passionate about? Because I popped hard. Chaotic Wrestling. You have you, your former tag team partner, and Julian Starr on commentary. I loved it.
I like doing commentary. When I was in college, part of my degree was in television and movie production. And so
Wow.
along with that came some like sports casting. We had run a sports talk radio show. Uh, and so I have fallen in love with being the voice of a company or an industry. And so anytime that there's a company that comes in, it was just like, hey, we need somebody to be on the mic. I love to be that color commentator guy. If you need me to be the play by play, I can do that too. But yeah, any opportunity that I can get to be in the booth, I will 100% take.
Nice. You talking about your degree? Are you in like any of these movies or anything?
No, I
Uh,
no. The only thing that like I've ever really done, and again, it's one of those pieces where you want to talk about like what could have been. I joke with Fury all the time. I was like, Brian, if you never called me, I'd probably be successful in Hollywood somewhere. But when I was getting back into wrestling and movie productions were all in the same thing. I'd worked on a movie as an intern. This movie called Chico that had oh my God, I'm gonna forget all of their names. And being on the movie set, if you needed to do day shots, you would work from 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. And if you were
Mhm.
doing night shots, you'd work from 4 p.m. to 4 a.m.
Yeah.
So the hours were grueling and it did not coincide with wrestling. So once I finished that internship, it literally was like, do I want to continue in the movie industry or do I want to go towards like my dream of pro wrestling? And I just decided to choose pro wrestling.
Nice. So you talk about giving back to younger talent. So what made you, after all these years, want to become a trainer and a coach at NEPWA? Because I see the post, you, AG, Dijak. What an all-star crew you guys have.
Oh man, that is so much fun. When Brian Fury had taken over the Chaotic Training Center and he had turned it into the New England Pro Wrestling Academy, he had come to me asking me if I would be willing to be one of his trainers. And so I leaped at it. And so for almost 5 years, I was a trainer there right before the pandemic hit, and then I had to step away. I just Brian introducing me, Brian being the one that brought me back in and being able to be with all these like beginner students and like mold them. And again, like coming through that school, you Christian Casanovas. I met Dijak when he was a brand new student. I met Mikey Webb when he was a brand new student. AG was training at top rope, but he later kind of came over in the more experienced ring. Like there are guys that have come through that school that I don't take claim to, but being able to watch them grow and like teach them some beginner stuff, it it fulfilled me enough that I was like, this is where I want to be. Like, I want to make sure that I can just like I said previously, give back as much as humanly possible.
Yeah. So you talk about giving back. So I'm curious, what does the future hold for Scotty Slade? I see Lucky Pro, Atlantic Pro. You're on commentary for Chaotic. Your music hits. You go in the ring.
Oh my god. What's the future?
Are there any other boxes left you have to check? You talked about that earlier.
I think as far as like what the future holds for me, I just want to do this until one of three things happens. This is what I tell most of my students. Either it's not fun anymore, I'm not making any money at it, or like it's not physically safe. And so until those boxes get checked, I am going to continue to push myself to get in that ring, give back, see if I can reclimb the ranks. Again, I don't need to be the premier talent on any of these shows, but I do want to then restart to get myself out there. I think I've got maybe at best 2 years left in the tank before that injection I had on my back probably starts to wear off. So if I can play with this borrowed time, I've already checked the box off where my daughter was able to see me wrestle, and now we'll actually remember it rather than as an infant. So yeah, I think that's what's next for me.
Nice. Scotty Slade, I want to thank you for doing this. However, I've ended every interview the same. Now, the day you decide it's all done, it's going to be way past 2 years, but the day you decide it's all done in pro wrestling, what do you want Scotty Slade's legacy in wrestling to be?
Legacy is such a funny term.
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't, I think this sounds like I'm talking to my own funeral. I think all I really want is when my name comes up in locker rooms, when my name comes up at schools or anything of that nature, I just want to be remembered as the good brother that wanted to do everything possible to make sure that everybody had the maximum output for their careers in pro wrestling, that I would put anybody over and make sure I worked to my max to make sure that you had one of the best matches possible. And then at the same time, being known for like my promo work and just my comedy skill set, and that's all I can hope for.
Yeah. Scotty, I want to thank you for doing this, man. It's completely crazy. I mean, some of these people, like, your topics on some of these interviews are new. So the fact that you said yes, man, I was pumped.
Hey, you know what? I appreciate you reaching out. This has been like a great time. And again, your research has been amazing. You brought up some wild stuff.
Thank you, Scotty Slade, for doing this. And thank you, everybody, for watching this episode. This was Best for Business.
Thank you for watching this episode of Best for Business. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, because this is Best for Business.